Quiet.
Start it?
Quiet.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
And welcome back to another Singular live stream. This is a midsummer stream because it's midsummer, and boy, is it hot outside. Who do I have today? I have, well, my right and left hand rock star all rolled into one. Catherine's joining me today, Travis behind the scenes. And we have a little what's new to kick this thing off. And then we have a demo from Ian Fletcher at Grass Valley. I'm looking forward to this one because I've only taken a little sort of look here and there of AMP and Grass Valley's offering in the streaming world. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I like looking at things that I haven't really had a chance to dive into. So we're going to go into a nice discussion with Ian. I'm looking forward to his demonstration, but we're going to start with a little what's new from Catherine. So if you want to take off with the what's new section. There's my right. I usually call you my right hand rock star, but today you're my right and left hand rock star because
okay, that works.
Well, you know. So what do we got on the what's new department? I'm always intrigued on what you have for us on the what's new with Singular.
Yeah, there's been some exciting things happening in the Singular world. So I think one of the most compelling things that we've worked on recently is that we made a very significant update to our Google Sheets widget in Composer. So we further optimized access to the Google API to reduce run-ins with their set limits. So it's now even easier to funnel live data into your custom Singular graphics from a Google Sheet. So our Thomas on our side did a lot of work on that, and it's a nice improvement to the widget. Additionally, in our recent webinar, we demonstrated the power of our adaptive feature set by showing how easy it is to set up graphics that actually adapt to any screen size. We're really just scratching the surface in this session of adaptivity and what web native tools really can do to completely transform your live productions. So you can check out the replay of that session in our webinar playlist. And then lastly, we care a lot about contributing to a sustainable future here at Singular, and we're happy to have been shortlisted for SVG Europe's One Planet Awards for Sustainability in Sports TV. Along with our fellow shortlisters, we've demonstrated a meaningful contribution to a climate-friendly society, and it's something that we're really passionate about, so we're proud about that. So you can check out links to all of these things in the description below.
Yeah, that was cool. we got an update from our team on that, and I was pretty excited to see that. And like you said, the adaptivity. Go ahead and check that out. That was our last stream. I thought that was a first good scratch, but as we know, there's quite much more things you can do with adaptivity.
Yeah.
And the work that Thomas did on the Google Sheets, absolutely, we got a lot of requests on the Google Sheets, and we took a first stab at it, and I think it was pretty good. It worked, but it's a little confusing. I think we made a nice leap forward on making it easier to understand to get that data off those Google Sheets into populating your Singular graphics.
Yeah.
So that was really neat to see. And yeah, I think now we jump into introducing Ian Fletcher is joining us today from Grass Valley. He's going to show us AMP. I'm going to sit back and watch and learn. And Ian, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I actually wish I was in Grass Valley, the location, because it would probably be a lot cooler up in the mountains than where I am in England. We don't very often get hot summers in England, so of course nobody has air conditioning. So apologies for all the fans and the server noise you can hear in the background as it's all trying to keep cool. It's not very good. But we're English. We complain
it's
about
clear
the
right
weather.
now. It's good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if it's raining, we complain. So it's sunny and hot, we complain. So it's good. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we're looking forward to
we're
taking
happy
a
to have
look
you.
at AMP, and the table is yours. And I'm gonna watch as a curious student from Singular. So the floor is yours, my friend. Have at it.
Thank you. Well, I suppose the first question is for those who don't know is what is AMP? And the challenge in answering that question, it depends who you are. We have a lot of customers, a lot of them in the sort of enterprise space, in the sort of the higher end broadcast space, but not exclusively. So AMP is used sort of across the board, really. So to some customers, it might be a multi-channel playout system that's running hundreds of channels of playout either in the cloud or on the ground. Other customers, it's an asset management system that's got built-in HTML5 editing and capabilities to do huge numbers of operators and users. I mean, this was used on the Olympics for tens of thousands of hours of recording and editing and production. So that's what some people see AMP as, and to other people, it's a signal processing system for taking in signals. For other people, it's remote production. But increasingly, it's all of those things to some customers. So the whole point about it is it's an ecosystem. Over the last probably 10, 15 years, we've seen this continuous move from dedicated hardware systems through to software systems, starting with things like Playout, something I was heavily involved in the when I was slightly younger and had a bit more hair. And now we're kind of taking that vaporization, if you like, of broadcast equipment as far as we can. And it's a long process. Customers can move as fast as they want. Grass Valley still makes hardware. There are lots of use cases where dedicated broadcast hardware and FPGAs make total sense. But increasingly, broadcasters are under pressure, and media content owners are under pressure to do more with their content in a more cost-effective way. And of course, that's where the cloud comes in. So AMP is it's not an exclusive cloud product. The orchestration layer, as we call it, runs in the cloud. That's where it's all managed from, and that's a SaaS product. Customers sign up to that system, and they have an account within AMP. And then we have what we call the data plane, which is where the video processing is done. And customers can attach compute nodes to our orchestration layer in order to do some video processing. And that could be on the ground, it could be in the cloud, or it could be both. And so that hybrid way of working is very important to a lot of our customers who need the flexibility to be able to keep the processing close to where all the signals are, but burst out to the cloud for certain use cases. And it's also not a single thing. It's not a single block of software. There are lots of products on the market that are sort of verticals. They're a single piece of software, a production switcher or something like that that's moved into software and put in the cloud. AMP isn't like that. AMP's a collection of hundreds of separate microservices. So think of it more like going into an equipment room in a broadcast center and looking at all these hundreds of bits of equipment and servers that are sitting there and taking all of that and virtualizing it in the cloud or just into commodity IT servers, but having this incredible flexibility to be able to dynamically reprovision it on the fly. So depending on what show you're doing, what you're working on, you can basically spin up these little apps using what we call workloads, and you can effectively build a broadcast operation in a matter of minutes to solve a particular problem. And so it's very popular when it's used to sort of spin up complex sort of broadcast chains in the cloud for things like live sports events. They're the kind of things where broadcasters need to take in streams, put some graphics on them, perhaps put a slate at the beginning and end, and then feed them out to their OTT services. So we've just, for example, one customer's just been using that for the Commonwealth Games. So they were taking in all of the international feeds coming in, all 20 of them, putting them through like a little master control chain, QCing them, going between a slate, telling the viewers what's coming up next and when the event's finished, and then re-encoding that back out to SRT again. So that's a use case where it doesn't really make sense to build a lot of on-premise hardware just for an event that lasts 10 days. And so that was all done in the cloud. It was all done in a single AWS instance, actually, with then another AWS instance in another region as a backup. So, that's a cool kind of common way people work. And so you can build some very big systems. So visualizing those systems becomes increasingly important. So this is just a view of a system we've got running in Grass Valley, and this consists of various computers in different parts of the world. So we've got some on the ground, we've got some in the cloud, we've got some in Montreal, and then we've got these green lines represent all the signals flowing between these different places. So quite often we find that AMP gets used to manage even third-party products, and it's very important that AMP is seen as an open ecosystem, and we encourage connectivity with third-party products, as we've done with yourselves, and we'll demonstrate shortly, because we really want to make it easy for customers to pick best of breed of different products and then integrate them together into this overall architecture, which is what AMP's very good at. So let's kind of dive in a little deeper and sort of see how some of these kind of basic principles work. So customers start with this top level portal, and from here they can go into what we call the App Store. And so to give you an idea of how granular it is, even things like inputs, these are individual microservices. So you pick the ones that you want. So if you're on the ground, they could want 10 or SDI. If you're running in the cloud, you might be using SRT, RTMP, NDI, obviously. So these are all inputs. So you would create some of these input workloads to get signals into your compute node. And then you've got the same for things like outputs, all the different outputs that we support, uncompressed and compressed. And then you decide that you want to do some production with those tools. And they could be things like playout tools, production switchers, various different production tools that we have, again, depending on your use case. So they could even be things like a full Grass Valley switcher, K-frame switcher, hot panel connected to the cloud with all the software processing happening in the cloud. And so that flexibility to be able to go from a very small mixer that can be used for, say, 4 inputs right up to a 32 input production using a big physical panel is what really attracts customers to AMP. And obviously, because it's a SaaS-based system, you only pay when you're using these things, and the amount you pay depends on which kind of applications you're using. So again, the pricing varies by use case, so makes it very flexible to accommodate customers' different business requirements.
Yeah, that's nice.
So once I've basically got some of my apps, so here I'm looking at, this is just a single AWS instance. It's not even one of their bigger ones. And you can see here I've got about 40 or 50 individual apps running. So that's bringing in my signals, processing them. I've got clip players. I've got some multi-viewers. I've got everything I might need to do a production. And if I suddenly decided, I need something new, then I can just create a new workload simply by giving it a name. I'll call
Is
it
there
a
any chance
test.
you can zoom just a touch in your browser, Ian? I don't know if that's just me.
Yeah, so there we go. So I've zoomed in a
Oh,
bit.
perfect.
So I'm
Yeah, that's great.
creating something called test bars. I'm going to decide which of my compute nodes I want to run it on. So I'm going to add it to my existing AWS instance. And then I'm going to pick which of these applications I want. So these are all the different applications you can see here.
Cool.
Loads and loads and loads of them. So somewhere down here under the S's, there should be something you recognize. Look, Singular Live HTML5 graphics. I'll show you that in a minute, but I'm going to pick something really simple. Just, test signal generator, latest version, OK, and then that is now being deployed. So if I filter my list to show, I can't remember what I called it now. What did I call it? Test, didn't I? There we go, test bars. So I'll just zoom back out a minute so you can see that. So that's already running, actually. By the time I'd actually got that, it had downloaded the software, provisioned it, it started it running. So I can now click on it, open up the user interface, and then I can do things like say what I want to put in the message and turn on a clock, something like this. So now I've got a sort of test signal that I can then use in my production. And when I've finished with it, I can just turn it off again. So that's basically running, as I say, what we call the data plane. And the key thing about AMP is all the video processing is full uncompressed YUV 10-bit. So we're compatible with UHD, HDR, SDR. So it's full broadcast, totally transparent signal quality, which again is very important to our enterprise customers. So the signal may be coming in compressed, but once we've got it, if we pass it through loads of microservices, so it might go into a mixer, to a multi-viewer, DVE, a keyer, all of these different things, it will stay totally uncompressed at that point. And so that's how simple it is to spin up a workload. And then when I'm finished with it, I simply stop it again from there, or the operator can do it from their user interface just by hitting that power button. And that will spin that down, and that's freed up a little bit of compute to be used for something else. So in reality, customers build these workloads out for specific shows. They then stop and start those shows and collections of workloads, depending on what they're doing at any time point in the day. And if they need additional compute capacity, they'll spin up additional computers in the cloud to do that. So visualizing all of this, as I say, is very important. So that's where these dashboards get really important. So this is one that's running actually on a compute node under my desk, local to me. And so I can use this to manage my system. I can see all my inputs. I can see what's running. So for example, over here, I can see I've got a couple of NDI inputs configured on my system that are currently pulling in some bars. But I can also see here I've got an NDI camera running on my network, which is a live picture of me there. And so if I now want to bring that into AMP, I can simply just drag and drop that source onto one of my NDI inputs, and that will now tell its microservice to join that flow, and I'll end up with that signal becoming available to me. So it's now appeared on the keyframe there. And if I then wanted to send that back out again, for example, to send it to what we call one of our low latency monitors, I just drag and click on it, and that's now available up here as live video on my dashboard. So you can see me, I'm now waving at you through this other camera over there. And that also gives you an idea of how low latency AMP is, because if I move my mouse out of the way, if I do that, you'll see how quickly that signal is coming from that NDI camera through AMP to the cloud and then back onto my monitor on the dashboard there. So then if I want to put it back to the multi-viewer, I can just do that, and that's now showing me my multi-viewer. So you can see everything I'm doing here is all HTML5. So for example, if I wanted to spin up an additional master control here, I just go start workload. See, it's all grayed out at the moment. So that's now provisioning, creating another master control switcher so that I could do a production. And then when that comes up, everything will reestablish itself as it was. All the flows will come back, all the pictures will come back from previously. And then if I want to control it, I can simply click here, and it will take me through to the user interface for that particular application and enable me
That's
to
cool.
start controlling it. Again, all just using a browser, all securely, obviously, but just using any browser, which means it's ideal for remote working, because I could be doing this from a coffee shop and actually switching a production from anywhere where I've
Yeah.
got access to the internet. But obviously, having lots of tabs open can get quite messy, especially if you're trying to look at multiple things at the same time. So the other thing we have is we have a thick client application called GVUI, and this lets me build custom panels and layouts where I can bring different things together. So, for example, here I've got the same thing, but I've got the master control, I've got the flow monitor showing my cloud multi-viewer, and then down here you can see the Singular workload. So to get this working, I've simply gone onto our store, I've clicked on the Singular workload, I've downloaded it and provisioned a workload within my system. If I wanted 4 of them, I could run 4 simultaneously, as long as I've got the right licenses from Singular. And then I could do 4 different sets of graphics, all rendered natively in YUV at full frame rates. So even if this is an interlaced system, we'll render at twice of the speed to get lovely, smooth, interlaced motion. And then what we've also done is, although normally you would use the Singular user interface to trigger your graphics, we've given you the option to actually do it directly from the AMP user interface here. So
that's great.
if you look at the monitor bottom right of my multi-viewer here, what you're going to see is how low latency it is. So if I do a cut here to go between 2 sources, you can see how quickly, from when you hear my mouse click, to when you see it change on the screen. I've also got a key on here. So what I could now do is I could go take in on my Singular layer, and you can see it's actually added the graphic. And if I wanted to switch this, might be better to see this full screen, I could actually switch my multi-viewer to my monitor here to program out. And now, instead of seeing the multi-viewer, I'm going to see program out, which is just reattaching to. There we go. So there's program out. And now I can take my graphic back out again, and then bring on something else. I've got a timer here that comes in somewhere. Bug here, so let's bring that in. So I can bring in all of these different layers using the Singular tools directly inside AMP. If I look at that another way, I've got another layout here which shows it where I've only got the Singular control and I've got again the flow monitor. So what I can also do is edit the text here. So if I wanted to promote myself to my full title of Sir Ian Fletcher, I could simply do that, and that's now dynamically changed the text directly in Singular. And that's one of the things we really like about Singular, is that ability for us to develop those APIs so that we can drive it in real time. So when I hit that button, that sent a message to the Singular cloud, which then came back to the renderer, which was running inside AMP, where it was then rendered live on the screen. So we're really pleased with how this integration turned out, and we've had some very good feedback from our customers as well.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's really nice to see. It's really impressive to see when partners like yourself at Grass Valley are able to take advantage of our API with those REST commands to populate and change variables or properties within our graphics. So that's just great that you can go to our UI, but you can also do it directly in your user interface. It just depends on like you said when you kicked off your demo. It really depends on what type of production you're doing. But boy, are you guys granular. Wow. I mean, we just looked at a cloud, I'll call it a cloud router on steroids, all the way into a cloud switcher. Just really, I'm going to say just logical for one thing, but very granular, amazing. You can how each process is visible. You can monitor it. You've got proxy rendering going on for all the little videos. Really impressive workflow.
Yeah, and then, obviously audio is a very important part of any production nowadays. So we've got an audio mixer here that can take up to 64 inputs, 32 outputs with full compression, EQ, noise gates. So again, that can often, that's often a vital part. And the key thing is because these are all individual applications, not only does that give you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you wire the system up, but it also gives you flexibility in terms of operators, because obviously I could share this production with you. So if you had a login to my system, I could send you a link to my audio mixer, and you could now mix the audio for my production, and then someone else could be doing the switching. So it lends itself to distributed working, which again is a key part of what a lot of broadcasters and media companies are looking to do. Yeah. So I've kind of shown you the kind of granular level of it, but not everybody wants to work like that. Sometimes you just want a tool that you can just turn on and use. Say if you're doing streaming or you're doing an event like what we're doing today. So we've also taken all of that knowledge that Grass Valley has in building production switches for 50 years and built that into another standalone application. So it still works within AMP. It uses all the same sources and flows, but I don't need to wire this together. I basically run up this one application and it's fully self-contained. So this is like a mini production system. And so cool. I have the concepts of different shots and scenes, and I can obviously do transitions and cuts and mixes between these things. And then if I want to do something a bit more complicated, I could create a picture-in-picture kind of effect and edit the properties of a layer and move things around to get various different effects for sort of more complex productions. And again, we've got this fully integrated within Singular, so that directly inside, if I just put this shot on air, so if I do transition through to that, then you'll see that's brought on my caption and then taken it off automatically. If I then look at the next shot, then what I can do here is I've got my Singular integration, so I can click on here and I can see all of my compositions. But I can also see that I've got the ability to change the text here, change the offset, how soon it comes in after the shot's gone on air, and how long it stays on air for. So this means directly inside Live Producer, if I now take this next shot, it'll cut to the video, bring on another Singular strap, but with a different text content. So rather than have to create lots of different versions of the graphics in Singular, I can just create a single template, and then directly in Live Producer, I can drive what's actually being displayed at any one time. So it becomes very much a one-person operation. So using Live Producer, I could do audio mixing, I could play clips, I could do graphics. It really becomes it's ideal for sort of streaming use cases. And in fact, quite a few of our customers that use it for corporate communications, where they want the quality and they want the quality and the effects that you can get with a Grass Valley production switcher, but without having to train somebody what these 500 buttons mean on this huge big panel.
Yeah.
So in fact, this uses exactly the same microservices in the cloud as our K-frame software switcher does. So whether you're an operator who's used to a traditional production switcher panel, or whether you're using something that's much more visual like Live Producer, you get the same effects and the same quality and pretty well the same feature set, just with a different operational paradigm. And certainly we're finding, as I'm sure you are, that with this sort of new generation of users coming into the market, they very much are looking for new kinds of tools that are not necessarily the same as the traditional ones that broadcasts used for many years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we see that all. Yeah, this Live Producer is very nice, very streamlined UI. You have the basics in front of you: preview, program, sources, audio mixing. It's not overwhelming, like you said. Perfect for all kinds of sort of one-off, one-person band operations. Really nice. Yeah. Really nice UI. Yeah.
And you get all your little previews, and you probably can't see it on. I'll try zooming in a bit, but you can actually see even rendered directly on the screen there at the bottom. You can just about see the little Singular bug. So even before I've taken it to air, I'm getting a tiny little preview of what that graphic will look like when I go to that shot, which is really cool. And I love the fact that we can tell the Singular to render a tiny little version of itself in HTML, and we still get a perfect representation of what it will look like.
That's
that's pretty
impressive.
cool.
So, I mean, you've talked about the power of APIs in terms of exposing the capabilities of Singular, and we totally agree. We think the future of broadcast and operational paradigms is not to basically force people necessarily to always use everybody's user interface, and to actually allow it to make it much easier for vendors to do things like we've just seen here. So one of the things, and again, without getting too down in the weeds, but one of the powerful features of AMP that customers are really latching onto is every single application within AMP. You can see down here all of the different applications, even the one we've written for yours, all expose what we call an AMP control protocol, which is a self-describing API. So I can just click on my user interface here, and I can see that this particular command takes an ID, a name, and a payload. And I can then go to something like my audio mixer, and I can go to channel state, and I can see that that takes all of these possible parameters, everything to control the audio mixer. And so we use that, for example, to map physical panels, like a Stream Deck or one of our Grass Valley map panels, or a MIDI mixer panel, so that you can drive AMP using physical control surfaces, but the customer is able to pick any feature of any AMP product and sort of put it together. And they can also do that on dashboards. So you might often see, I mean, I had one on my dashboard here. You can add these kind of custom buttons so that instead of giving them an entire mixer, they can just have a little button panel here. And you can see as I punch these buttons, it switches what's on air on this mixer. So
that's cool.
What we're finding is increasingly customers are now building control surfaces for specific shows. So they're basically cherry picking the features they want from all the little AMP services, and then they're building a custom control panel to an operator that says there is everything you need to do your show. And so, that ability to do that, and we've even extended that recently with something called this panel builder. So using this panel builder, I can effectively go into edit mode, and I can go in and sort of look at all of my different widgets I've got. So I could say, I'd quite like to have I need some control of my audio. So I'll add an audio fader widget on here, or I want an extra button. So let's add a button to control my keyer, turn my keyer on and off. So I can add a button here, and then I click on that, and then using that AMP control directory of features, basically I can just give it some text. I can then pick the feature I want to control of my mixer. So let's say I want key state. What parameter? Is it active? What color? Red. Save. So now, if I save that, I can now assign this to an actual mixer that's running. So I can pick my any mixer that's running in AWS. Now you see it will all light up. And now I'm actually talking to my mixer in AWS. And now when I do that, I'm turning the key on, and it's tallying back that the keys come on. So basically, in 30 seconds, I customized the control panel to give a user an extra button to control the keyer. But I've not given them any of the things they don't need. So effectively, it means very, very focused user interface. And this is a key part of the AMP strategy of making it very easy to create. You've got all this ecosystem of microservices, but exposing them to users in a very friendly way we think is critical. And again, the AMP control protocol is all available to third parties to both control us, but also to write their own effectively little apps that can expose functionality into AMP and then be controlled from one of these panels. So, I mean, I've really sort of just scratched the surface there. I could have spent all day just on one tiny bit of it, but hopefully that's kind of given you a pretty good understanding of what AMP's all about and how people are using it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I'm glad you kind of wrapped up the demo with this UI builder, because you made a comment just moments earlier about the APIs, and it's something we've spent as on our side of the fence. We're pretty proud of our API. I just looked at the latest version with Thomas, and the R&D guys are really, focused on making it, expanding it. We've had a number of integrators that have asked for different command sets within our REST API, which we've come through and done that. But so many of these different types of systems, whether you need, in some cases, like you said, Ian, you need to talk to physical devices, and there's a good reason to use physical devices in a certain environment. But you're only as good as that API and your ability to have well-documented APIs where you can control those devices. So our integration with you, from what I understand from our guys, it was pretty smooth. I think you guys were able to so that's something I'm really proud of on our side of the fence. But your point is well taken. I mean, the API, it's an API-driven environment, especially in the enterprise side of the business. If you don't have a solid API that is well documented, you kind of get left in the past. And I think what you guys have done with AMP, because I've been in the business for quite some time, as you have, and your traditional big production control rooms. Like you said, now you can go in there with sort of your software hat on and say, I want this. Those are now, as you've described them, as microprocesses. Decide what you want, even down to the UI builder is just beautiful. That's a really elegant approach. You don't see that every day, and that's a lot of work on the software side of things. So hat tip to you guys on that side, to allow users to get right down to allowing them to build the surface that makes the most sense for their production. Because at the end of the day, it's only going to be successful as the operators and the people that are actually clicking on that software or clicking on those physical devices. You mentioned Stream Deck, another, it's amazing what people do with Stream Deck. Which when it began, it was just like, oh, that's a cool little streamer, Twitch streamer's little gadget. No, wrong. It can do so much when you plop a device as simple as that into an AMP sort of ecosystem or production, and off to the race. That's just one small example. Very impressive. I saw AMP a number of, it was probably 2 years ago. I think we got a demo of it at the office in Burbank, or at the Grass Valley something in Burbank. I remember I was impressed, but wow, is it a lot more has happened since I saw that. It was very responsive, even with the screen share, seeing all the proxy videos updating and stuff, extremely responsive, very low latency. Again, when we're doing screen sharing and doing a stream like this, you're going to see some latency, but wow, was that quick. Impressive.
Which is cool.
Very, very
that's cool when you're doing remote production. In fact, quite one or two of the big network broadcasters use AMP. A lot of all they're using it for is that low latency monitoring. This kind of came in obviously during COVID. You can't ship 100 people to a sports event and cram them in 10 trucks anymore. So they were forced to look to alternative technologies, and we were just around at the right time. So many of those broadcasters have got so used to that ability to keep their staff remote that they continue to use it now as a really vital production tool. And I was actually went up to one of the big sports, one of the big golf events recently where AMP was being used to do exactly that. And you see production people just with an iPad just walking around the compound. They may still be at the venue, but the fact that they can just have an iPad with them that's showing them a multi-viewer from the truck or program out for 100 milliseconds latency or less is a really powerful production tool. So sometimes it's just the simple bits of AMP that customers latch onto, and then once they're using it for that, it's very easy for them to spin up additional things when they suddenly have a problem in the middle of a production. It's like, oh, we just could do with a clip player to put a looping background clip on a switcher somewhere, and 10 seconds working AMP, and you've solved that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
we've
any
got
questions?
Yes,
Network bandwidth
I was going to
limits
say
to
that.
work
We have a
smoothly with
question.
AMP.
Yeah,
That's a
network
common
band
question.
limits.
We get it.
So great
Ian
question.
doesn't see this because you heard it. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear it. So I'll answer it both ways because it depends how that question was asked. But basically, on the control side, everything's tiny little messages. So when I'm pressing buttons and when I'm looking at keyframes, that's tiny amounts of bandwidth. If I'm looking at live video and the video you saw in my desktop, so if I go back to that desktop and look at this live video that's coming in there, which is also on the massive monitor behind me, that's only 5 megabits. Low latency, 5 megabits, full 1080p, 59 in this case. You can have, customers play around with the bit rate. They can go higher if they want to. But to be honest, I mean, it's probably hard to tell on the screen share or the camera. But 5 megabits is perfectly acceptable for most broadcasters to make production decisions on. So it doesn't take a huge amount.
Cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, contribution, that's a different discussion. How do I get cameras from a venue in the cloud? Again, compression depends on what compression you want to use. Customers range from 20 to 50 megabits, depending on how high end the production they're doing is, and what kind of compression they're using.
Exactly. Well, I think it's it's a question we get asked all the time. And same thing on our side, it's tiny bits of data sending messages when we're changing properties within a graphic. So we rarely have, if ever, have issues on that side of the fence. And I think what your point, doing small little commands from your UI are tiny bits of data. Many emails that you send are much larger than sending a click here or there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? I know Travis is in the background. Well, I think another challenge for us, Catherine, I think we need to do a live stream with these tools. I think I feel the challenge. I embrace it. I know Travis does too. It'd be fun to use your guys' UI to do a live stream.
I'm sure we can have that discussion. You've been good enough to give me a free Singular account for a while now, so the least we can do is return the favor.
Yeah, Travis says he
wants
to
actually. So. Yeah, I think it'd be really. I think we could. It's a challenge. I think Travis could figure it out very quickly, but it's nice to be able to. Maybe the next time we do one of these with Ian, we do it with your tools. So. Travis is always up for learning new things, and we can show people a real world scenario. We'll do some slick graphics. Then the challenge is on us, Catherine, you and I, to make some really cool graphics. We'll get Suzanne to help us out. We'll make some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I want to use those automation tools for sure.
Absolutely. Impressive. Well, as long as there's no more questions, this video will be posted on our YouTube page, and we'll send it out of our social channels. Ian, I want to thank you for joining us. I have a feeling we're going to do another demo with you with your tool set as you guys continue to improve your product, and we're really happy to have you guys as a partner. So thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a little bit later for you out there. I'm on the Eastern Standard, Eastern time, and so I think you're 5 hours ahead of me. So thanks for staying up a little bit later on this Tuesday evening. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's lovely outside. It's just right for a nice glass of cold rosé now. So
nice.
There you go. There you go, Ian. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Bye.